A small bit, please. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So for the interview, really, just introduce yourself, and I'm just really interested in your story, like how you came to be, like where you came from, and how you got to where you are now. Now I know where you are now. You're a producer and you make your own record, but there's so much more to you. Like there's
For sure.
you're going around these, but even just to take us up to how you got into sort of the music, would be amazing.
Yeah, sure.
Just to hear that journey.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think the musical beginnings started really early. I'm one of 4 children, and my father, by profession, was a chef, like a fine dining chef. But he loved playing guitar. So every time he'd come home from work, he would help feed us usually. And then he would kind of come down by playing guitar. Brilliant. So I grew up hearing a lot of guitar being played around. And on my mother's side, her father, my grandfather, Carlos Romero, was an oboe player and teacher a professor at the Conservatory of Music in Chile. So my mom loved classical music and like opera, because that's what she grew up with. So she would, when my dad wasn't playing or something, there was always like music around. And so like we grew up in a very like warm and like melodic home where we were dancing or goofing around or listening to the Beatles or Simon and Garfunkel, and my dad would come home and play, and we'd just sing and stuff like that. But then once I went into grade school, my parents always put us in art schools. Okay. So I went to performing arts schools from the age of, what is that, like 5 or 6?
Wow.
Yeah. So I was exposed to like a lot of really beautiful, like, you know, early education in the arts. So it was very, you know, natural to my family, but also part of my education as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so this was, I think from when I was young, I was always singing and making up songs. And I was also trained in dancing as well. So I grew up dancing contemporary and ballet. But then once I was in middle school in the States, there's a point where I had to kind of choose what my emphasis was. And I really loved choir. So like I was in a choir of like 50 kids, and I loved splitting off into different melody, and it was really challenging for my brain, and I really liked that feeling. So, and it would really train me for my ear and how to tone. So I put an emphasis on music and went into just like one dance class, and then I kind of fully went into music class. And then I think by the time I was 16, 17, I was playing guitar like my dad and writing songs on the guitar. So I think by the time I was preparing to go to college, I felt very strongly that to not go to this specific college that I was looking for. Okay. There was this one that was really great, which is the Berklee School of Music in Boston. Okay. It was so expensive. I mean, my parents were very hard workers. I'm the third of 4, so their financial means were like very limited. And I didn't want to go into that type of debt. I didn't expect them to either. So I just kind of sat back, and all the other schools that were available didn't really have an emphasis on what I wanted, which was music production. Right. So I had tried to, I was trying to graduate earlier. I just kind of was like, okay, I just want to get on with it. Like, I don't know. I was just kind of like, I want to just start making music. So I studied really hard, but then eventually I felt like I was stressing myself out to graduate a year early. So actually my senior year, my last year in school, I had 6 months free to do whatever I wanted because I got all the other credits.
Okay.
So what ended up happening was I interned at a music studio.
Perfect.
And that was the first experience I had of being in a studio with other creatives making magic, essentially. And then I just didn't want to leave. I was like, I love this place. I can just stay in this vibe forever. And then I started to learn programs. Or first I was like shadowing the producer doing the edits, and it was blowing my mind what he was doing. I was like, you can change the pitch of a vocal, like you can take it from a D to an E just by the computer. And I was freaking out, but that's possible. Right. And so he was like, yeah, but to me, no one had ever, I'd heard pop music, I had seen people perform it, but I had never seen the behind the scenes creation of it on that level. And then that's when I just got very obsessed with music production. Anything I could get my hands on when I was around other people that produced, they'd be like, oh, show me how you do this. And the first thing I was messing around on was Fruity Loops, which was just beats, just moving sounds in different patterns. And I had this really big crush on this guy, and he was programming on that. So we'd hang out and make beats together. And then by the time I think it was like I jammed with this group, and we would go out into the city and do these like live jams just for fun. And one of the friend of a friend had seen me sing on one of the sets, and he was a singer in a band that was signed to a major label. And he was like, oh, I want to work with you. And I was 18, I was very young. So I was like, okay, what does that mean? And then he was like, well, where do your parents live? I'm like, oh, they live 30 minutes away. He's like, well, let's have a meeting with your parents. Because he could tell I was like very young. And, so he brought my parents, and he was like, I want to manage you, and I want to work with you, and I want to develop you. And I was just like so excited, because that's essentially what I wanted to do, is just get into music. I wasn't necessarily thinking like, oh, I'm going to become a pop star, but I definitely was like, oh, like I could grow in this field that I really am passionate about. So then I just said yes, like let's go. And then like I started working with different producers, and then I eventually moved out to California. And my partner at the time was also a music producer. So we were very much in music. I mean, since
living it, basically.
Living it, breathing it, sleeping it, everything. I mean, we love it, Any artist that commits themselves to a thing, like, we just all love it. We love what we do. So I kind of got, and when I say we, I'm talking about this whole community that I was in. We were just like so hungry for like the ecstasy of music. And when I was younger, when I would go into writing, or when I would go into creating something, I noticed a subtlety in the way I thought. And all these other kind of practical functions would shut down, and I would kind of go into a more expansive, still space. And then that's, to me, what really drew me into not just making music or making money with music, but really getting into an altered state of consciousness through music, where I would kind of get into a trance-like vibe, which I think a lot of people get into when they're creating anything. It could be a crossword puzzle, it could be designing a dress, it could be pouring, I got into tea ceremony later, like concentrating on exactly what you're doing. And that's the undivided attention. And I loved that feeling. So then I would kind of really go into music and really spend time developing my voice, my ability to sing, my ability to produce, play guitar and keys, all the fundamentals you need to be able to actually make something.
So music, in a way, became your yoga, where you sort of became meditative and then went inside yourself to create.
For sure. Because yoga is like, people think it's just a practice of movement, but it's so much more than that. It's the mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah. And also as well, I find, and I'm sure you do, that people who are into music, or whether they're into raving or whether they're making music, end up becoming into yoga, meditation, become healers, become very spiritual. There's a huge link between the music, whether it's the vibration, whether it's the thing. Have you found that, like, in your community of the music producers, that a lot of them get into yoga and get into meditation? And
I mean, by this time I was in California, so I grew up in New York City. I moved to Germany for like 2 years because I was part of a music studio there. It was a beautiful music studio, and I was kind of like, live in New York and hustle for rent, or like move to this very relaxed part of the world and make music and have lower expenses. Yeah. So at the time I was like, well, before I do that hustle flow, I would love to experience that. So I was there for like just under 2 years. Brilliant. And I studied German and I was doing music.
Wow.
And then it was kind of like that season had run its course. And then I was looking to move back to New York. And then this whole thing happened where I had been sharing through my producer and collaborator, long-term friend, this body of work that we had just finished. And they wanted to sign it and work with it. So that's what kind of catapulted me into Los Angeles. Okay. And Los Angeles was, I would say, the ultimate school.
Right.
For music. Okay. Yeah. I'm really grateful for that experience, because I think if anybody wants to, there's a creative side to music, but if you want to make money with it, it's a completely different thing. And people think that you have to, I'll say this. Most artists don't understand the value of their work because, bank heads and people that are, very much in a 3D instant gratification, they can't appreciate or understand the creative process.
Right, yeah.
So often artists are pushed out of these bigger industries because they're like, don't waste their time, you're too sensitive, you're too whatever. But the reality is like anyone can, there's plenty of people in, banking industries that have had an awakening and decided, oh my God, I'm a terrible father. I need to be good to my kids. I need to, make a change. I need to, there's plenty of people that can have a heart change. It's just, what are we focusing our energy on? And with artists, when you enjoy the stillness of creation, then yes, many of my friends were into yoga, into breath work, into plant-based psychedelics, into deeper types of like experiences where there was camping or what they call ceremony, with various plant medicines that would help kind of be a therapeutic aid to things in the subconscious. So yeah, okay. It was like very much all of it and everything. And I would say on the music production side, by that time I was signed to a manager, and he was lovely. He was very, and is still like a family member to me. He's been a really beautiful friend. And he had been in the music industry way longer than I had. He was like a little similar age as my father. So he kicked my butt. It was just like, look, this mix is not where this mix is. do you hear the difference? And it was like, yes. It's like, all right, keep up the good work, you know. And then I would kind of disappear with my co-creator at the time, and we would just work so hard to get it from here to there. And it was pretty grueling, but then eventually we started to learn about what gear was necessary. So the more studios I was in, the more I was seeing, oh, this is why Rihanna's vocal sounds like that. Not to take away from her quality of singing, but the quality of the recording was so clear. And that's what a lot of people don't have. That's why you get this indie rock or indie whatever, because they just don't have the gear that is picking up this bandwidth of frequency.
Okay.
Because they just don't have that level of quality. So that was the thing, is like there are things that you just need. You don't need a lot, actually. And luckily now technology is to the point where, you know, they're simulating quality and compression and tubes and things like that. Where before, like, you needed a tube mic to get that quality. Right. And now it's shifted in the last 5 years. I would say it's very, very advanced, and people, even price point, just more accessibility. Like, people can get a pretty good sounding mic for under $1,000, where before, like, you couldn't get anything quality under $3,000. You know, so like that's, you know, for working class people, like that's a big jump. So now you can create on a quality, and that's kind of like the age of Spotify and Apple Music and all these like streaming is now there's so much accessibility. It kind of got blown open in every way. Yeah. So I was definitely part of, like, from music going to just A&Rs and music supervisors to, you know, being asked to be on this playlist on Spotify, and actually being able to see royalties from that long term. So, you know, it's interesting. I think that my journey has also been a humbling one because, and I was sharing this with you a little bit on the way here, is even within the music realm, you have people that understand. It's actually quite magical. People understand that you can't make people resonate with a body of work on a mass scale. It's literally like the lottery. Like, for example, Adele as an example. She was everything that most music industry people would say is not going to make it. You're just not pop. You know, you're just this, you're just that. Your image is like this. You cuss on this interview, you're smoking, like, you're kind of rough, like, you're not the next Madonna, sorry. You know, but actually what the general public needed, like, they already had their pop stars. Like, they wanted someone raw. Yeah. And that's why it blew up, because it genuinely resonated with a large population of people. And it was an anomaly. It was like, wow, it kind of flipped it in a way. I mean, obviously it was very like songwriter, but it wasn't like her later albums were pop. Yes. But her earlier albums were just soul, you know? She was just a soul singer, just like singing her heart out. So, you know, you have that, and then you have, you know, things like Sigur Rós, an Icelandic band. Like, they blew up, and he was singing half in Icelandic and half in a language that he made up. You know, and people couldn't get it, like, but the general public needed this very etheric, open, plain music that wasn't so defined. And all that to say, there are exceptions, and in Hollywood, it's very their span for, or their capacity for different variations of genre is much better now, but that's like the last 3 to 5 years. Before that, it was very much like pop, 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 hip hop, hip hop, hip hop, and like trap, and then just like kind of DJ music. So it was really hard for me because I had a lot of industry people looking at me as a potential this or that. And I knew who I was, So it was very hard for me because I couldn't quite go against my gut feeling.
Wouldn't be you.
Yeah, or it would be a version of me that's heavily influenced by exterior motives. And that felt, I mean, some people can do that, but I think when I say I'm sensitive, I feel like we all are sensitive, but it depends on what you allow to override that kind of part of yourself. And music was too precious to me, where I was like, I can't become callous or easy in that.
Yes.
I can't. I love it too much, and it's sacred to me. It's actually something very sacred.
Yeah.
So to me, I felt like I would be really doing something wrong if I listened too much to what other people thought about what I should do.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think was really frustrating was that most people that were telling me their opinions did not make music.
I think.
So we would have meetings and I'd be like, one ear in, one ear out, like, sure, you're a businessman. I respect that you've gotten to this level that you're at. However, have you made music, and when, and let me hear it, you know?
Yeah.
Are you connected to yourself and to music enough to give me, you know, constructive criticism? On a technical aspect,
Yes.
It's beneficial because they're just used to a certain quality. I get that. But in terms of creative flow and melody and composition, meh. You're just following what everyone else is doing. How can I listen to that? And that's very dangerous for an artist.
Yeah, they know how to make money,
Yeah.
but they don't know how to make music.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
depends on which one you want.
And luckily I was able to witness both, you know?
You sound like you've come from sort of the OG school of producing, and you're coming into you're seeing it change and coming into the modern world. So you have that old school way of how things were and how you used your ear.
It was still the very digital age, like talking like 2013, 2015.
So you're still, and it's
Yeah, I would say the OG would be more the analog gear.
Yeah.
Like that I was after that for sure.
So you were you're just behind it, so you were just changing technology.
Yeah, the industry was just shifting from like analog to digital.
Yeah, and even that jump in those 10 years must be like you say.
Yeah,
huge.
even that. Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, and I met this wonderful mixer who had done all this like really big stuff, and he was the gear guy. Like he had a spaceship of analog gear in his studio, and he made so many amazing mixes. And then I went to his studio by invitation. Him and his wife were very kind, and we were hanging out. And he was like, "Let me play you this mix." And then he pushed one. It was a Red Hot Chili Pepper mix. Goes, goes, goes. Stops it. Okay, now listen to this one. Clicks again. Goes, 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 goes. And he's like, "So, which one do you like better? Which one do you feel has the most clarity, or that you?" And they were so similar. Most people probably couldn't differentiate much. Maybe a little bit. It's like, oh, that one felt more like this and that one felt like this. But they were basically identical, very, very similar. And I was like, well, I liked this aspect of the first one, but I really liked the aspect of the second one. And then he was like, well, the second one was mixed in the box, which means in the computer. And the other one was on all this gear.
Wow.
So basically, he had tweaked it where most industry people would want him to produce, mix and master things. But it was so difficult with the analog gear. Because they'd be like, can you take that sound out of that T in the second verse and da-da-da-da? Because this was people were already using digital mixing. So most people didn't realize that for him, it was going to be a nightmare, although he was one of the best. So he was like, I think I need to change my workflow because the production world is just it's not going to stay there. We're going in a different direction. So lucky for him, he switched over right in that transition.
Okay.
So I would say me, like the second or third generation after that, we were kind of like, we can do everything in the computer. And then it wasn't until I was in LA where I realized, oh, to get that vocal, to get that, you know, even synth sound, those are analog synths, you know, those are, you know, that's a granular reverb, that's a tube mic, that's a preamp, that's a condenser. So I kind of had to learn that, yes, you can do a lot in the box, but you also need certain tools to get a certain quality of recording, capturing sound to go in to the computer. So it's both now for sure. Some people just go with digital, but I heavily believe in both. I think that they're both have their things to offer in terms of like texture and sound and feel.
Yeah. Probably
You know?
that kind of thing with vinyl and CD. People are going back to vinyl.
Yeah, vinyl's coming back in a beautiful way because you can't fake that texture of sound. You know,
Yeah.
it's just it's a physical thing. Some things just should be physical in that way.
Yeah.
Just do you mind if I ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
absolutely. Yeah.
Just even on that vinyl thing, I've experienced vinyl for the first time only a couple of years ago.
Wow.
When my brother got one for Christmas.
Oh wow.
I just found the sound to be so warm
Yes.
and rich,
Yes.
and I wasn't expecting that quality
Yes.
sound to come from
Yes.
it. Is that a real phenomenon, or is that more placebo, or what do you think? Is it something in between?
It's 100% true. Because I think the difference is that, like an analog synth versus a digital synth, there's a different type of mechanics to it. So like the warmth is coming from the wax and from the needle. So the needle is stroking this wax and it's a miracle. The sound comes out of it, but it's literally transferring sound from the vinyl through the needle, through the wire to the speaker. So there's so much happening in between that you're getting this texture that we recognize as warmth. You know, but it's just like, you know.
But then I suppose when you go a little bit deeper, that's almost that. We talked earlier about that connection of energy, transferring of energy, or moving it through the needle, and it's producing out. Where it's like your chi or your energy is. It sounds very similar.
Yeah. Similar in what way?
In the way, like you explaining the needle, and it comes out in the sound, and this warmth comes out, and that warmth is like the projection of chi or energy.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a
movement,
kind of movement where everything just kind of interconnects to each other, and whether you believe in that or that, but it's there. The connection is there, and it's just you can hear it when you're explaining musical terms. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's why probably we obviously would actually just while you're on that, when you're recording the frequencies, like we know that there's healing frequencies that are quite. So how does that translate now into your recording? How do you use those frequencies in your recordings?
Well, you know, I think frequency is everywhere, you know, like, and the tuning. So when you're tuning an instrument, you're like back in the day before there were tuners, we were tuning to each other essentially. So it's like, yeah, that feels about right. And then you would use kind of one instrument, a bass instrument, to tune others. So we found like through frequencies that there were variations of hertz in terms of tuning. So it wasn't until, which I didn't know this, that it wasn't until World War I where there was this kind of dominant say in what hertz everyone should tune to. So one being 440, others were 432, others were variations in between. And it wasn't until I think we were able to measure frequency that people could understand the value in the different hertz or the different tunings. Before it was kind of like, well, why would we tune it to a different hertz? Because it's so impractical. It's kind of like trying to use, you know, a car that drives in kilometers in a place where all the signs are in miles. It's confusing, you know? It's just slightly off. And with Hertz, it's definitely something that isn't really convenient to change your tuning, because most people or musicians, they're tuning to 440. Okay. So with 432, what I found, well, number one, I'll say a little story. When I first left my publisher at the time, because I felt, for various reasons, not really important, but I was so, my vocal was so exhausted. I was singing all the time in the studio, at shows, and not only that, but I was with a band. So I had to sing so loud, even if that was amplified, just on stage. I had to push my vocals so hard. And then when I took a break, I was like, no electronic music right now. So I would just play my guitar in my living room, and I tuned it to 432, because I remember one of my weird mathematic friends back in the day was like, you should really try 432. I think it's really good. And I was like, okay. And then I didn't really think much about it until later. I was like, let me tune it to 432, because he was talking about the resonance with water and the body. And so I was like, okay, I need that right now, because I could feel it in my vocal. So I would tune it to 432, which is like, when you're tuning, there's cents in a lot of the programs. So it was pitched down a certain amount of cents to get to that frequency of 432. So I tuned my guitar, like a very simple tuner, tuned it, and was just singing on that for like maybe a couple of weeks. And I noticed probably within a couple hours of singing in 432 that I didn't have to push. And I found that interesting. And that's kind of what initially got me interested, because though I am a very spiritual person, I'm also very careful of like information that may not be applicable to in a physical aspect. So when I felt it in my body, I was like, okay, I like this. And then started to record in 432. And it was tricky, because some of the, you know, on some analog synths, you have to tune it like a guitar, where you have to literally tone in 432 and then you tune it. But most musicians, again, like they're tuned to 440. It's easy to tune down, but most people, they just don't make music in that frequency. So it's not quite the norm.
Right.
So, but my last album, all of it is in 432. And you would never tell a difference unless you were to tune the whole album into 440 and then play them next to each other, and it would just sound like a weird mess.
And what would be the difference if you were to play this? Would the 440 be faster or louder, or?
It would be slightly higher in pitch.
Okay.
Yeah, and probably you wouldn't be able to pick up that it's faster, but it would sound like maybe like a half step up, like from a D to a D sharp. It would come like, it gets kind of wobbly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you're just the bass A is in a different frequency. So it's the same scales, it's the same whatever, but it's just in a different frequency timeline.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously then when you sing it and you put it out, if you're singing to me or as it's the audience, like would I be getting what you're getting? That if you're getting the 432
Absolutely.
and it feels, so there's that transfer of energy and frequency again.
Yeah, exactly.
That comes.
Yeah. So when like there was that Japanese scientist that, remember, he did all those studies on the grains of rice, where he had 3 grains. One he loved and gave it so much love. The other one he said hateful words to, and the last he left. He kind of did nothing. And it's very similar, where like we are mostly water, like our cells, our bodies, So when you look at a plate, you can go on YouTube and just, that alone, I think just kind of speaks for itself, is you have a resonating plate and you put water or sand, any natural material. And when 432 or other like healing frequencies are played that are mathematically tuned to basically the fabric of reality, you can see it. And it's kind of like the shell. It's kind of like these things that are just here. And we want to reason with it, but it just is the way it is. And these frequencies just resonate deeper with water. That's just the way it is. It's just design.
Wow.
Yeah. So when, like for example, the bed at Mary Ellen's it's this resonating bed that's hitting you with these frequencies. So, I mean, I was on it a couple of days ago, and it's literally like the water, the cells in my body are all vibrating at that frequency. So that's why the singing bowls, all that, it's kind of like, what are all these people into? Because if you see a video of it, it looks quite strange. People just sitting and like, and there's like this person just like playing these bowls. But when you actually experience it, or you have a gong, just like, whoa, whoa, like kind of vibrate. Like think of it in like a X-Men or like a, fantasy way, Harry Potter, where it's literally moving through you. It's moving through your body and behind you. Maybe the person behind you isn't getting hit depending on the spacing, but it's resonating in the room, so everyone's benefiting.
Yeah, they're very powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the same with chanting. I know we would laugh at chanting at the beginning of yoga and stuff, but when you can get a room full of people connected and doing the same thing, the vibration, you can feel the energy and the vibration actually moves through the room. It's actually an amazing feeling.
It's amazing. And now there are all these rooms that are tuned to hold those frequencies so they can actually circulate and move around.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, I think now because of technology and not being so limited in our ability to measure and build structures, but at the same time, there's all these churches with the stone and the marble and the, these rounded cathedrals, like all of the tops are rounded. They understood frequency and sound, so it's ancient and it's new, which I love that because it's a kind of a fundamental truth about being human. We all deserve to live and laugh and love and make music and art and whatever we're drawn to. But I think music, like we all love it, because of resonance. We need to tone and release and sing, Everyone should be singing. Doesn't matter to what quality you think you are or other people think you are. You need to use your body.
And it's funny when you talk about water as well, because I don't know if it's for most guys, but as soon as you get into the shower, you start singing. It's a phenomenal thing, and you just start singing stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then you finish your shower and you don't sing. I just find it all the time. Even going to the gym, you get lads in, they start whistling, they start singing, and
oh, cool.
And it's only when you mentioned, the frequency is set towards water or made up of water. It's like when the water actually hits you, it just.
Yeah, I like that connection for sure.
It seems, and it might not be that connection, but
I like that.
But it actually.
I resonate with that. Yeah.
Came and I just thought, maybe that's why we do that when we're in the shower. That's
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to the Whistling Gallery?
No.
I think it's in a cathedral in England, I
think.
Okay. And basically it's up in one of the domes.
Yeah.
And the circumference of the gallery is over 30 feet. If you, in an ordinary circumstance, if you whispered, they wouldn't hear you. But if you put your mouth up against the wall and whisper along the wall, it will travel. And if the other person has their ear, they will hear it perfectly.
There's actually in Clonmacnoise, they have one. They have a similar one in the door. Next time you come over, we'll bring it to Clonmacnoise. It's not far from here.
Fun. That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's just hearing you talk about music, and you just start to hear about. That's why this happens. That's why that happens. And we've separated music to be something that we just listen to, or go clubbing to, or do something. But
that's so great too.
which is fantastic.
It's fun. I'm definitely a raver. Like I can go till 4 a.m. I love it. I love dancing. I love doing that.
And I can see when we used to go raving years ago, we used to be listening to the acid and stuff, and you just close your eyes and you were just gone for like 4 or 5 hours. And you can see why people rave and why people came together, like tribes, and just like what they do in Africa and stuff. They play their music and they sort of...
Totally.
Raving is just the modern extension of that.
Exactly.
Basically. I know people talk about, people taking drugs, but it's not. It really isn't drugs. It's actually the music and the frequencies that actually do the...
Right, yeah.
The sense of community.
The sense of community, yeah. And everyone's in...
Everyone's just a weirdo.
Good spirits.
And like dressing weird and nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
It's great.
And everyone's your best friend.
Yeah.
For that particular time.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that.
So it's just seeing... So now we've got to there just... Because I know we've got to head off and you've got to get you back. But what have you got coming out at the moment? Or have you a huge catalogue behind you? Or have you got new stuff that you have out? If you could talk about it.
Of course, yeah. So I released an album, a 15-song album in June, late June. That's called Blissful State. Brilliant. So that took a lot, but I'm really happy with that body of work. I really pushed myself to be very true to what I wanted to create without much exterior. Even I wasn't really listening to much music. Just because when I get into a creative mode, I'm listening to things, but it's very sparse. Different types of more like ambient or instrumental music when I was like cooking or having friends over and things like that. But for me, like getting into an album, or I very much was just like living my life and then making music. So that's that body of work. And now I'm been playing shows and getting more into because playing live and being in the studio are slightly different muscles. It's like running or swimming. You kind of have to like switch. So now I'm like training more for live. And the next body of work is going to have a lot of live elements in it. Okay. So that's just a practice that I'm into. So once I'm getting into recording the next body of work, that I'm in that muscle as well. And
when you play, obviously, do you play with a band or do you play with other people?
Yeah, good question. I think definitely some people. I mean, I love playing music with my friends. It's the best ever.
Brilliant.
So I played a show in LA and I asked a group of my friends to play with me. And luckily they all said yes and were available and were able to work with me. And it was beautiful. We did everything from scratch. So like we didn't have any tracks or anything. Wow. And that was like a different version of the songs, but they were equally as beautiful and lovely. So for me, like live, even though I might play songs from my last album, there'll be a new version because I'm just a new person all the time, and I want to play things differently, and I'm feeling maybe certain emotions, and I'll sing it slightly different, not even melodically, but how I emote it. All that to say, I'm writing a lot. I'm collaborating with people as I'm traveling, and then I'm going to be doing an art residency in the winter, so that'll be kind of like an incubation and like really bringing all these colors together and starting to weave something.
Fantastic. Yeah. And where can we get your body of work? Where can we like purchase your albums? Or...
So it's on Spotify, Apple Music, really everywhere. My artist name is Esaro, Esaro. It's a combination of my family names that I put together. And also Bandcamp. I would encourage people to buy any music that they want to buy on Bandcamp because it goes directly to the artist.
Okay, I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, I mean the other ones do too, but it's like Bandcamp is very artist friendly in terms of their royalties and things like that. So Bandcamp is the most direct way. Obviously, streaming is great if you're like wanting to get to know an artist, or maybe you don't feel like purchasing anything right now. You have your subscription fees and stuff. Just, you know, download it, like their albums, because that helps algorithms. Because now we're in the day of robots, so
but
it's
do
a
you get
different
paid
game.
from that?
Yes,
You do. So even if we're listening to it on Spotify, people you do get something from it. It's not like
we do, but there's a lot of uproar about royalties and
you
Spotify.
probably don't get enough, a lot. You get a very
It's not
minimum.
fair necessarily, because you have techie, again, this like business brain benefiting off of people's art. And it's not fair, because they're making billions and millions of dollars buying houses and trust funds while artists are scraping by. And they created the technology, true, to like distribute this music. But at the same time, like, to be disrespectful, I think, to people in terms of royalties per play is questionable, in my opinion. And a lot of, this isn't, you know, even that radical of a viewpoint, you know, but I feel like, yeah, do it, because Spotify and Apple, you will get royalties when you listen to the artist. But if you really want to support artists, like, buy their vinyl, download, buy directly from them, buy their t-shirts, whatever they're offering, because that goes directly to them.
And so Bandcamp is the one, the big one.
I would say so, yeah. And a lot of like producers, some people, they're so anti that they only put their music on Bandcamp, because they're just like, I don't want to encourage this behavior.
Yeah, but you're very risk, because you make something. It's very like the farmers here. Like, you make all that money, you make the stuff, you produce the stuff, and you get a tiny percentage. And by the time it gets into the stores, like, there's €2.50 put on it, and all the middlemen in the supermarkets are making all the money.
Yeah.
But the guy who makes it, does all the work, gets nothing.
Yeah.
It's very similar, isn't it? When you make something, it's
You need that vertical integration.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Yeah.
we need to go straight, cut out the middleman, just go straight to Bandcamp, and just
give the artist. So the album is called Blissful State.
Blissful State.
Yeah, and you'll see like a little picture of a fairy, and that's me.
And I heard one of the tracks, and it's brilliant. It's banging already, so I'm looking forward to the new one.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'm going to let you go, because you've got to go. Of course you can,
Just something that was actually, you kind of alluded to it earlier on as well, when talking about the algorithms and things like that. But it's something we're going into a brave new world now.
Yeah.
What are your opinion or thoughts on AI generated music? I'm just really interested to hear what you think.
Yeah. It's funny you asked me the same thing.
They said yesterday, great minds think alike.
I think that we cannot like deem something as bad or good, because we're in a world that there's everything in between, right? I think that it's a lack of awareness to understand the difference between AI generated music and the difference between human composed music. So AI is this, you know, super brain that is basically like all of documented human life, it being able to compute and spit out new ideas from those other ideas. So I would say that though it would probably be so fascinating to hear a body of work from an AI that's really moving, and I'm saying it's probably very possible, because that intelligence is coming from our collective magic, which is compositions that were previously created. So the AI is learning what all those movements are in Beethoven's symphony, you know, and that supercomputer is creating a new thing from that, which some people could say is just copying, but it's actually a new form of synthesis, just in a different way. So it's synthesizing music. So I think, all that to say, it could be something where there's AI generated genre, because when you hear I'll just go back to Adele because we used that as an example earlier. When you hear Adele sing, like if an AI were to just copy her, I don't know, we're mammals, like we're animal creatures too. So we'll feel like that doesn't quite feel like her. Or that doesn't quite look like him. Or whoa, it looks so much like him, but it's creeping me out. You know, like kind of like that, where you know it's just generated. Not that AI is like evil, but it's creepy when you see a wax figure. You know, you're kind of like, doesn't quite feel like human. You know, so we're just, our animal is like, I don't know, you know? But with AI generated, I think I haven't dived into that world enough to speak too much more on it, but I am curious to see what's possible. In terms of tools and production tools, there are AI tools now that are helpful, but still, it's not, the creative process is still very human in that sense.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
As they say.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to say thank you
Yeah.
so much. Like this has
Thank you for having me.
mind-blowing and so much
Lovely.
information.
Great.
And I know we've got loads from it, but I know that everybody is going to pick something out of it as
sweet.
they go out. So I'm really excited for other people to hear this conversation, because musicians and just yogis or anyone, basically, you've kind of hit so many spectrums in the one.
Amazing.
So thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and I know it's
thank you for
precious,
having
and I
me.
really do appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
And we look forward to coming over again.
Yeah,
and
for
hanging
sure.
out with us. And
Yeah.
seeing.
I love it. I love that.
Go to, what was the name of the place again?
Tunnel Noise?
No, Bandcamp, was it?
Oh, Bandcamp.
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 That was in a different room.
Yeah. You're like Temple Bar?
I was thinking physical places.
Perfect, thank you.
Great.
That was amazing.